Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn. Today's deck is a doozy. The gremlins are multiplying and they're frickin' everywhere. Before we talk about the deck, I do want to give a huge shout out to my patrons over at patreon.com/quarantinedcapricorn. That's Yuck Foozy and Squirrel at the Brew Crew Elite tier. And then, of course, our forever CPU savior, Terrence Rohrbach. Thank you guys for helping keep this channel alive. Also, tons of new subscribers. We just blasted through 3K subscribers about a week ago, and we're already almost to 4K. We're this close. So thank you to all of the new subscribers. If you're new here, hope you're enjoying the content. We're going to keep grinding. We're going to keep spitting out decks. This deck is called Gremlins. And the idea here is we're trying to take sacrifice synergies and go wide token synergies and combine them with legendary matters synergies using Ratadrabik, and then find ways for those synergies to overlap and really double up a lot of the potential that the deck has. So before we talk about the deck, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. We're so close to 4K, and I'm so humbled by all of the support I've gotten. So many of you have reached out to me with words of encouragement, and it really does mean a lot. I've worked so hard on this channel. Most people would say probably harder than it's really worth, but if your heart's in it and you're passionate about it, you really just got to push through and you got to go for it, man. You got to follow your heart. So that's what I'm doing, and it seems like you guys have been really receptive to it, and I'm super grateful for all of your support. So like, subscribe, help me out. Let's get there. Also, catch me live Monday through Friday over on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/quarantinecapricorn, because if I'm alive and I'm breathing, I'm there and I'm streaming. Let's break down this deck. So I just want to point out really quick that there are some cards we included at first that you'll see in the first couple games that aren't on this list until we finally honed in on the cards that seem to matter the most and landed on a final list. Most of the gameplay today is from the list you're seeing, but those first couple games, you might see a card pop up here or there that we were trying out that isn't included here, so take that with a grain of salt. But the idea here is, what if we can go wide with tokens with a sort of sacrifice token tribal sort of deck, but at the same time go wide with legendaries and make it a legendary tribal deck so that we can utilize Ratadrabik, and then we have some crossover synergies so that the things that are sacrificing our tokens and getting value off that can also sacrifice our legendary creatures after we have Ratadrabik, or maybe even multiple copies of Ratadrabik on the field. So we have ways of enabling Ratadrabik to get multiple copies without relying on our opponent killing our stuff. So that's kind of where the deck started. And the version that we ended up at is actually super interesting. I'm pretty excited about it. So we've got 4 copies of Ratadrabik for sure. And since we're playing Mardu, we're also running 4 copies of Jaxis. The important thing to note about Jaxis with Ratadrabik, we went over this back when these cards first came out. We were brewing with these cards back then, but I want to point it out for maybe anybody that's new that wasn't around when those decks came out and when we were brewing that on the channel. Jaxis, if you blitz Jaxis in and use it at instant speed with haste to make a copy of a Ratadrabik, that copy is going to first be a token that's legendary, then the legendary rule is going to trigger. You're going to have to keep the original Ratadrabik or the new token. Since the token's going to die at end of turn anyway because of Jaxis' ability, we choose to keep the original Ratadrabik. The token dies, triggers the original Ratadrabik, and then we get a non-legendary version of the token from the Ratadrabik trigger to replace it. So we end up with 2 Ratadrabiks, which is crazy. One of them will be non-legendary, and then at that point, all of our legendaries that die will give us 2 non-legendary copies to replace them. Now, what really pushes that over the top is the fact that the Jaxis itself is still in play, and since it was blitzed, it's going to be sacrificed at end of turn, and we'll get to draw a card off of it. So what happens is at end of turn, now we have 2 Ratadrabiks in play. Jaxis dies, triggers both Ratadrabiks. Not only do we draw a card off of Jaxis, but we get 2 copies of Jaxis that are non-legendary onto the battlefield that are going to stick there. So at the end of the turn, we have 2 Ratadrabiks, 2 Jaxises that we're able to use next turn, and our board state is primed so that any legendaries that die, we're going to get 2 copies to replace them, which gets really, really nuts. And that brings us to our new cards that I want to talk about. We're using Anim Pakal, Thousandth Moon. Now, this guy has proven himself to be pretty darn nuts. Guy? Girl? Might be a girl. They've proven themselves to be pretty nuts in a lot of decks. If this survives the turn cycle, it just gets really out of hand. But what's great about it is even if it doesn't survive a turn cycle, you get value off of it the turn you play it, as long as you can attack with something. And that value is going to stick around even if they remove this with removal on their turn. So 1/2 for 3. Whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, you put a +1/+1 counter on Anim Pakal, then make a number of 1/1 gnome artifact creature tokens equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on them, and then you swing with the gnomes as well. So normally we want to play a 2-drop that can swing in, and then on turn 3 play Anim Pakal, start to get those counters piled up on him, start to make tokens, and from there we have all the fodder we need. But because Anim Pakal is a legendary creature, if we happen to have Anim Pakal out when we drop Ratadrabik, we can get so much more value off Anim Pakal, because then when he dies, not only do we get a copy to replace him, so there's some survivability built in. We don't necessarily lose Anim Pakal completely if our opponent kills him once we've got Ratadrabik, but if we can get multiple copies of Ratadrabik and start turning Anim Pakal into multiple copies of Anim Pakal, it gets really, really absurd. So the ability for Anim Pakal to be a legendary creature for your Ratadrabik triggers, but also be giving you a bunch of tokens every turn that you can sacrifice to some of the other sacrifice outlets in the deck, being able to do both of those things and kind of fit into both of those pieces of the deck make this card a perfect fit and absolutely great here. We're also running 4 copies of Bartolomé del Presidio, 2-drop 2/1, sacrifice another creature or artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on Bartolomé del Presidio. So not only are we able to go wide here with tokens that we can in later turns sack to Bartolomé to make him absolutely huge, but it also gives us a sacrifice outlet, which is really important. If they try to use exile removal on one of our creatures and we're not going to get the trigger off a Ratadrabik, we can just sack it to Bartolomé instead and get a copy. If we get to the point of having multiple Ratadrabiks on the field because of comboing out, we can now have the ability to trigger it ourselves, get our multiple copies when we want on our turn, when we choose to do so, instead of being reliant upon them dying in combat or our opponent having removal that's not exile removal and that sort of thing. So having a sack outlet here that not only gives us value for all the little critters that we're making, but also can double as a way to trigger our Ratadrabik whenever we want, is super, super good. And it's legendary itself, which means it gets protected by the Ratadrabik, and we can get more copies of it as we make more copies of Ratadrabik. So it's perfect fit for this deck. We're also running 1 Roaming Throne because we can name another creature type if we don't have Ratadrabik. Like, for example, human. There's a lot of triggers here with human. Anim Pakal will get double triggers, get multiple counters, make twice as many gnomes, that sort of thing, if we name human. And there's a bunch of other humans in the deck as well. There's a little bit of edge value by naming certain things that aren't human. But also, once we have Ratadrabik out, the important thing to note about Ratadrabik is whenever it makes a copy of a legendary that dies, and that copy comes into play as a non-legendary version, it also comes into play as a zombie. So if Ratadrabik's already out, or if we know we're going to be slamming him soon, we can name Zombie for Roaming Throne. And now all of our Ratadrabik triggers are going to get doubled initially because Ratadrabik's a zombie. But not only that, all of our copies that come into play of all of our different legendary creatures as we get copies because they die with Ratadrabik out, they're going to come in as zombies, and all of their triggers are also going to get increased by Roaming Throne, which just gets really absurd. It's a way to get triggers off of creatures that aren't necessarily the same creature type to begin with, but they all become zombies when they die and get their copies. So if you're naming zombie, they can still all get their extra triggers from Roaming Throne, and it can get really crazy. Now, it is a little niche. Normally, we want to be slamming this after we have Ratadrabik, so I am only running 1 copy, but I wouldn't fault you for wanting to go deep and add more if you'd like, but we're just using the 1 here. Let's start at the bottom of the curve now and talk about our card choices. We're running 1 Skrelv because it protects our board and then subsequently gets protected by Ratadrabik since it's legendary. We're running 1 Ashnod because we can get it out cheap. It's a death touch creature that can sometimes hold off the opponent's aggression, but it's legendary, so if it dies to Ratadrabik, we get more copies, and it gives us another sort of sack outlet under the right circumstances where whenever Ashnod swings, we get to sack another creature if we want and create a tapped Power Stone. So if we really just need to trigger Ratadrabik, sacrifice certain legendary creatures to get copies of them, this is another way that we can just do that of our own accord without relying on our opponent. Moving into the 2-drop slot, we've got 4 Thalias. Now, unfortunately, because it was released in 2 different sets, I have 3 of the Innistrad Thalia and 1 of the other Thalia. It is what it is. We've got 4 Thalias because Thalia can come down on 2, slow down our opponent, slow down all of their removal, and make it difficult for them to keep us from getting the cards out that we need to combo with. And then by the time we can, since Thalia is legendary herself, when she dies, we could potentially get multiple copies and get that extra 1 mana to start piling up maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe even 4 extra mana our opponent has to play, and keep them off of things like Sunfall, and that's super, super helpful. We've also got 4 Elas il-Kor. Not only is it legendary, and we're going to be able to get copies with Ratadrabik, but if we can get a bunch of copies of this, it triggers and gives us life as creatures come into play, and a bunch of cards in this deck do give us token creatures every single turn that we're able to sacrifice, but we're also able to get all that extra life gain triggers, and then as they die, we can get a bunch of life loss triggers on our opponent. And if we're able to turn Elas il-Kor into 2 or 3 copies of Elas il-Kor by getting out Ratadrabik, making copies of Ratadrabik, and that sort of thing, now we're able to gain maybe 2 or 3 life and make our opponent lose 2 or 3 life every time we get a creature, lose a creature. And combining that with our different sacrifice outlets, we can really kind of go nuts and sometimes kill our opponent outright by just going wide with a whole bunch of copies of legendary stuff, sacking them all to get more copies, and sacking all the critters they make to get a bunch of triggers on Elas, and it can be pretty absurd if done correctly. So we're absolutely running the full play set here, because if we play a second one when we already have one down and even just 1 Ratadrabik's in play, that second one will die to the legendary rule, but then give us another copy that's not legendary because of Ratadrabik. So full play set here, absolutely. We're also running 1 Jadar. Not super important card, but it is legendary, it does work with Ratadrabik, and it also does give us a token every single turn. That is just another way that we can generate creature tokens to use some of our sacrifice effects. Speaking of sacrifice effects, we've got 1 Tarrian's Journal. This gives us the ability to sacrifice our tokens early to draw cards, sacrifice our legendary creatures later to trigger Ratadrabik, and then we can pay 2, tap it, discard our hand, transform it into the Tomb of Aklazotz, and start using it to get back all of the legendary creatures we've sacrificed to trigger Ratadrabik. Now we can start getting the copies that we sacrificed back and getting even more triggers and even more ridiculousness onto the field. So both sides of this work really well with the deck. We're going to jam 1. This is another one of those cards where I kind of almost want to run more than 1. But we're trying to hit a high threshold of legendary creatures here too as well. So I think at least 1 for now seems fine. Definitely need at least 1 in this deck. It's just too good not to, but I could see this going up to 2 or maybe even 3. Speaking of 3, we've got Rite of Oblivion. This is another way that we can sacrifice our creatures if we need to, get value off of our little token creatures, that sort of thing. This allows us to exile any non-land permanent by sacrificing whatever we want. So sometimes we get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, sacrifice something on our side that's legendary that's going to trigger Ratadrabik, and exile the worst threat on their side, and then we can always flash it back to do it again. I love Rite of Oblivion because it's 2 removal spells in 1. Every time you draw 1, you actually have 2 different things over the course of the game as long as you have enough mana that you can exile with this card. So every time you draw 1, it's like drawing 2 in a weird way. And in a deck like this where you want to sacrifice things and it's not necessarily a downside, this card is amazing. So I'm running 3 copies. this is one of those cards I'd love to run 4, but there's just too many things we want to include. So I think 3 is the right number here. It's kind of a sweet spot. Moving on to our 3-drops, we've already talked about Anim Pakal, which is like the most important creature in the deck, I think. But we've also got 3 Adelines, Resplendent Cathar. Can be just as good as Anim Pakal, or almost as good. Anim Pakal has more long-term potential in that as it gets more and more counters every turn, it's spitting out more and more gnomes, whereas Adeline here is only spitting out 1 human creature every turn. But it also is a vigilance creature that can become really powerful itself and has a pretty big butt, so it's a nice addition. It's kind of like having an extra 3 copies of Anim Pakal in a way. So between them, we have 6 3-drop creatures that can spit out tokens every turn, and that are legendary, so that if they die while Ratadrabik's out, we can get a whole bunch of value and synergy off of that. We've also got 1 Lagomos. This is a card that works super, super well with the other 3-drops. But that's where it really shines. So we don't want too many of this because we really want another 3-drop out before we can get the most value off of it. But it still fits the deck perfectly, and I think including one, even though most people don't play this card, I think including one in this deck makes a lot of sense. It's legendary. If it dies, you get the Ratadrabik synergy. But also, it's going to make a token every single turn that you can sack to things like Rite of Oblivion or your Bartolomé or whatever. If you get to a point where 5 creatures die in the same turn, you can tap it to tutor anything you want out of your library. This is incredibly powerful, and in a deck like this, it's actually pretty consistent. We're only running the 1 copy, so there are going to be plenty of games where we don't even see it. But when we do see it, half the time we're able to trigger that because it counts the creatures that die on our opponent's side as well, not just ours. So a lot of times we can set up scenarios where our opponent has to trade creatures, and then after combat, maybe all we have to do is sack 1 creature to get to that 5-creature threshold. And when we're spitting out a ton of tokens with like Adeline and Anim Pakal, and we have sack outlets like Bartolomé, like it's really easy to meet those requirements and get to the point where 5 things die, and then we can search for whatever we want. And that's really, really powerful in a deck like this, especially with all of the little subtle 1-drops, or not 1-drops, but the singleton copies, like the 1 Roaming Throne, or like if we already have Ratadrabik, being able to grab a second Ratadrabik and get things exponentially triggering can be insane. So 1 copy of Lagomos, absolutely including it. Moving on to our 4-drop slot, we've already talked about Jaxis, which is normally blitzing in, so you can kind of look at this like it's a 3-mana creature between using the blitz and then using the ability after it comes into play. It's not normally considered a 4-drop in this deck, but depending on the situation, if we can't get a lot of value off blitzing it, there might be games where you might want to play this out just as a 4-drop, have it on the field ready to go for when you start to draw into the things that you can synergize with it, it's there and ready to go. But for the most part, you want to hold on to this, you want to blitz it in when the time's right. The 4 Ratadrabik for sure, and then we're running 1 Mishra claimed by Gix. This might be a little win more, but it's honestly just too fun to not include, so I had to throw 1 in. The fact that whenever we attack, our opponent will lose X life and will gain X life, where X is the number of attacking creatures, can get absolutely absurd when we have multiple copies of like Anim Pakal spitting out tons of gnomes that are all swinging and attacking in, and when maybe we can sacrifice Mishra itself to make 2 or 3 copies of Mishra once we get the combo with Ratadrabik going. Now we get each Mishra triggering off of all of these. It can get just utterly absurd, so we had to include at least 1 Mishra here. Sometimes we just jam this on the field after we've already got a bunch of stuff that's going to trigger it, and sometimes we can just win the game outright doing that. It can be pretty absurd, but that's the deck. There's a lot of 1-ofs in the deck, a lot of things that we're trying out, so I would not be surprised if there's a more consistent version of this deck that we can kind of dig into later and really figure out. But as far as like a version 1.0, a proof of concept of what a deck like this can do, I think we're finally at that point where we have enough crossover synergy between Sacrifice Tribal and like a Ratadrabik Legendary Tribal, where we can get a lot of value off both individually and then get even more value off of you know, being able to capitalize on both of those synergies happening in the same deck. So that's what the deck does. We're running 4 Plaza of Heroes since we have so many legendaries, 1 Mirrex so that we can spit out some extra tokens under the right scenario, and then a whole bunch of dual lands because we need to make sure all 3 colors work consistently. The deck is wild. It's super fun. The games were awesome, so let's just go check out the games. Whatever. Keep 7. Oh, you have to add them individually? That's weird. I think I want a Jadar first. Because, like, they're playing blue. Probably got a counterspell, right? I'll make him use it. And then next turn I'll be able to play Thalia with 2 mana up. Moment of truth. Sure. Unless you have a 1 mana counterspell. Nope. Consider. Alright, we're looking pretty good then. We'll jam this. Full control. Swing all. No, I said full control. What do you... Arena's just really trying to get on my nerves today. Does sound like I'm a noob, doesn't it? Full control. Next to combat, full control goes away. Full control. Next to attackers. Full control. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, right? Because he's going to block stuff, and I'm going to feel real bad. But I still want to make sure I can make it work. I think my dog's puking. Hold on. Ah, dog. No, I'm not who ropes you. My fucking dog's just being a pain in the butt. See, here's the thing. When I have to rope, it'll happen once and only once. The guys who are assholes, you can tell because it just keeps happening over and over. You can pet the dog. Swinging with a 5/5. Okay, my turn. Sick. Can you counterspell it? You might be able to. That sucks. Get a couple triggers. Full control. Full control. And then I guess we'll do I guess we'll do Thalia because we can just play another one next turn. Plus he's got a cost reduction on all of his spells, so it's not hurting him like it used to. As he runs out of cards, it's not going to really make much of a difference. Alright, traded the Terror. Luckily we can keep draining because of Mishra, so if he swings in, we crack back and we get some life back, and it's kind of whatever. Sha-na-na-na-na-na-na. Do a little bit of that. Sure. This little bit of residual life gain is going to be important, I think. Yes. Orange deserves to be stared at. MCBG. Mishra claimed by Gix. So the deck that we ended up finally landing on, that seems super cool, is Mardu Legendary Sacrifice. And utilizing Ratadrabik that way, because there's actually, over the course of the last few sets, there's a good amount of legendary creatures that spit out tokens. And a good amount of ways of taking advantage of those tokens. So it's kind of where we're at, Orange. You're supposed to do it on my turn. He screwed up and he scooped. That you're just gonna lick me. That's how our life is now. This is our dynamic. I stream and you just come over and lick me on stream when you want. I see how it is. We will try because we're on the draw. Greedy freebooter. Greedy free booty. Free booty. The booty is free for anyone who's greedy. Just so you know. You gonna kill him? Do it. That's what I thought. Time to Lagomos. Cracking the blood token, getting rid of a swamp. Dockside Chef. Another greedy freebooter. Sure. We're gonna go Drabik. Do a little swingy swing. And that's about it. Do a little bit of this. Discard a little bit of this. Keep you. Get some triggers. Swing. Swing. Because we could get 2 Lagomoses. But if he doesn't block, and kill it. We'll just do it like this. Unfortunately, we can't sack it to the journal because we can't afford to draw cards right now. And we're already going to draw a bunch off of Jaxis anyway. Ow. Dockside Chef, sure. Adeline and Anim Pakal. We need to be able to sacrifice things, don't we? Alright, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go Anim Pakal. Hello. Anim Pakal. Then we're going to go and we're going to make a copy of Anim Pakal, sacrificing or discarding rather the other Jaxis. Keep the original. Get 2 Ratadrabik triggers. Next. Swing. guess we just swing to get all the triggers, right? It's pretty good. Block, block, block. Alright, this is going to be dangerous, but we got to do it. We're going to sacrifice. I guess we could just sacrifice the original Anim Pakal, right? Get 2 more. Draw a card, take 2, which is ow. But then we get to activate Lagomos. Search for a black or white source. Probably a red and white source. This would be best, I guess. And then Rite of Oblivion, targeting Sheoldred, going down to 4. And then we sacrifice the Lagomos to get 2 Lagomoses. And we're at 4. But the impetus is on him now to kind of have to kill us. Or he's just so dead next turn. Just so dead. Can he do it? That's the question. That's not nothing. We have to make sure we don't draw any cards. Black, white, Elas. Make a copy of Elas. Discard Braids. Ow. Make another copy of Elas. Get even more triggers. Gain a bunch of life. All that good stuff. Adeline. Next to combat. A billion triggers. Just a billion. And swing all except pull back you. You. Well, fuck it. Swing everything except the other Ratadrabik. We don't want to lose the token copy of Ratadrabik because we won't get a replacement for it, and that's what's enabling all the shenanigans. So even though it kind of sucks to lose a Lagomos if he blocks that, or an Anim Pakal if he blocks one of those, it's not anywhere near as detrimental as if he blocks the token Ratadrabik. So we'll just completely refill all of our life, make a billion creatures, all that good stuff. Alright. Deck did what it was supposed to do. Can't play 2 slow lands. We can keep this. Toss back you. Cliffs. Plaza Elas. Didn't kill the Elas. Interesting. Thought for sure he was going to. So we could play Roaming Throne and name Human. Get double triggers. Or we could name Phyrexian or Cleric and get double triggers off the Elas. I think I like Human. We've got humans in our hand as well. Hello? Hello? Jam with those. Make 2 dudes because of the Roaming Throne. Get 2 life. Seems pretty okay. Interesting. I think we want to discard the land to a Jaxis. We could draw 2 cards. Make a copy of Roaming Throne, discard you, name, if we name Human, we draw 2 cards when Jaxis dies. If we name Phyrexian, we'll ping for 2 life every time something dies. I think I'm gonna name Human. Triggers. I'm so confused. Oh right, we blitzed it in. So it... Okay. So we draw 4. We draw 2 off each of them. Yeah, that was pretty nuts. But we have a full hand now. So it's kind of like... whatever. We'll play Thalia so that he can't Sunfall. Do a little something like this. Thirst for knowledge. I mean, that's it. Because of Thalia. Thalia taxed it. This looks a little rough, but I think we can make it work. Go Thalia on 2. Oof. Probably takes Thalia, right? Makes sense. Then he'll kill Bartolomé. And then we're going to be really sad. Although if we can top deck a land, everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. That deep cavern bat is such a pain in the butt. We need to top deck a land. We need to play Lagomos and then Rite of Oblivion. There we go. Alright. Next turn, we can sack the token to Rite of Oblivion instead of Bartolomé. Oh god, another one? What is this? That's ridiculous. Luckily, he's kind of out of gas, though, right? Yeah, I actually think we can race him. Granted, he's got some lifelink, but he can't really block, or we get our removal back. Human double triggers. Yes. Human. Swing with everything. Alright. Full control gone. We can do this. We can do this. He can do at most 9 damage and regain 8, which is kind of rough for us, but we've got some shenanigans happening next turn for sure. Really depends how many non-lands he ends up dunking. you got for me? Red. Discard you. Name human. Sack Jaxis. To Bartolomé. Draw 3 cards. Well, that's fucking rude. And of course, no mana. But we get 3 triggers off Lagomos. So that's something. It's almost enough to win. Even with all the lifelink. We could find any card we want, but the problem is we just can't do it until the end step. Because these are all going to die. I mean, I guess if he gets unlucky. There's nothing we can play this turn. Right? But I guess if he gets really unlucky and just draws a bunch of lands, we could theoretically not take lethal. But I mean, the chances of that happening are incredibly slim. Yeah, we're dead. Still, we did some pretty crazy things. Literally the only reason he won is because he had 3 deep cavern bats in a row and was able to take both of our pieces of removal. Like, that's insane luck. Insane luck. I think we can keep this. We'll keep it. Alright, so do we want to get down to 1 drop, or do we need to make sure we can play our 2 drop on 2? I think we just Shattered Sanctum. I don't think Ashnod's important here. Elas playing against blue here, so worst he can do is kind of bounce it. We just replay it with Ashnod next turn. Oh, Sultai. Okay, he's playing Squirming Emergence combo. Does he have the Squirming Emergence? No. Or he could just be 1 card short because of the 3 in the... Oh, he's got 3 in the graveyard. That means he only has 1 left. That's kind of rough. get Anim Pakal moving quick. Alright, he gets his Squirming Emergence. Oh, I should have seen it coming, right? Because he could have played Portal. No, because Portal's 9. But he had 9.
Let's roll!
Jin. Thanks for the follow, Bergie. Appreciate you. Instant artifact or sorcery. So we just have to... We just have to race him. That's it. Doesn't want to die, so he just blocks that dude. That's fine. Takes 1, goes to 10. We might still have this, guys. What can you play with one with the multiverse? We got some pretty hefty shenanigans happening next turn, so... Founding. He's gonna go straight for 3 to grab Squirming Emergence. And get Virtue. Which I don't think is good enough. Oh, but now he can get... Okay. That's actually really cool. Sack 3 creatures. 1, 2, 3. That actually kind of works in our favor, because now our Death Touch guy is going to come back untapped, so he can't really swing. Oh, baby. Make a copy of Drabik. Discard Ashnod. Keep you. Get a whole bunch of triggers. Very, very bizarre. I'll show you after this game, Bergie. Alright, he's toast. We'll try keeping 7. See if we can make it work. Alright, Elas. Seems pretty good. Elas into Anim Pakal seems kind of wonderful. A streamer's gonna get upset at the shuffler at some point in his stream? Wow. In other news, water is wet. More life. More. 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 Man, that was pretty rude. I might even say super rude. Good swing, make some dudes. Get that back. But I think I like this better. We'll just get it back tomorrow. By tomorrow, I mean next turn. Ash Ken, 1/1/1. 1/1? 1/1. Koilos Awakening, a 1/1/1 with the multiverse. 1/1/1! I get it! What? Seems like a bad idea. Although I like that temporary lockdowns in the deck, because even though your creatures are small, it leaves them, which is kind of cool. That's actually really smart. Let me think. He's gonna be so mad. I think I just want to draw a card, right? Ratadrabik, that's nice. Alright. I mean, suppose I could have got him to 5 instead and kept Thalia in our hand, but... seems fine. Alright, 2 Abuelos Awakening. 2/1 with the multiverse. Gone. What can he discard to hit next? Traxa. Okay. Does he have another reanimator spell? I don't know, man. Oh, come on. You weren't going to let me do the thing? That is a lot of pain lands. But it's a pretty good hand other than that. We're going to try it. I'm crazy. We're probably going to die, but I'm going to try it. Well, we've got a Cliffs at least. I think we probably go... I mean, Thalia is not going to do much against that guy. But if we can go Jadar, next turn we can play Bartolomé. Oh, I guess Thalia is good against Moon Circuit Hacker, though. Maybe we do just play Thalia. We need to try to mitigate the damage coming in for now, because we have all these pain lands. We need to save life now so that we can actually spend it later. Hopefully. Alright, that means he can't deal with Thalia, or else he would have attacked with the Moon Circuit Hacker. So we'll just let it through. No ninjutsu. Alright, that's good. That's good. Bartolomé or Jadar? Let's Jadar now so that we can Bartolomé later. Fading Hopes the Thalia. Interesting. I mean, we will probably just trade Jadar for the Moon Circuit Hacker. No reason not to. Thousand-Faced Shadow. Anim Pakal would be pretty good right now. But we could also Thalia and Bartolomé. I think that's probably better. Pass turn. I have no idea.
That's what I thought.
I Ganjo. That's kind of rough. Alright. Well, we gotta do stuff, right? Let's do this. Let's swing. Let's play this, I guess. Hey, we got him. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck techs, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.